Welcome back. You're listening to Get Real with Bob and Stacey. You're joining us for our Leaders and Legends segment here on the Money Matters Radio Network. We have a very special guest calling in today, Becky Blanton, TED speaker and author of The Homeless Entrepreneur. Welcome to the show, Becky.
Hi, thanks, Bob, Stacey. Glad to be here.
So I want to give everybody some background on Becky. She is a ghostwriter. She writes and edits books for Fortune 500 companies, CEOs and business leaders from a variety of industries. She also writes for Homes.com with more than 3 million views a month. In 2006, Becky became homeless for more than a year after deciding to quit her job to travel around the USA. 3 years after that, she was speaking about her experience at TED Global, the Super Bowl of TED Talks in Oxford, England. She recently published The Homeless Entrepreneur, a book for the homeless or anyone with little to no money but has a desire to start their own business. And she's working on a workbook to accompany it and is in the process of creating 10-week workshops for the homeless entrepreneurs who are ready and willing to become a businessman or woman. So this is pretty interesting. Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you became homeless.
Well, my father died in February 2006, and I had an essay about him in Tim Russert's book, Wisdom of Our Fathers. Mm-hmm. And so he died, and one of the things with my father was his regret was not traveling. He worked right up till the end and died of brain cancer.
Wow.
So I bought a van and took to the road, hoping to avoid that regret in my own life and kind of fulfill his dream to travel. And when my freelance job failed, I ended up not able to find affordable housing and started living in my van. And people started seeing me as homeless, and we just went from there.
Right. And in fact, I was reading a little bit about your bio, and it lists all different types of people who were basically homeless entrepreneurs at one time, like Jim Carrey, Dr. Phil, etc. So it's not although I've never heard of it happening to anyone, it sounds like there's a lot of people that ended up there at one time.
Yeah, and anybody can. I think people have a false sense of security thinking it can't happen to them, but you can get cancer, lose your job, have a car accident. There's all kinds of things that can throw you into that homeless situation. It's quite a shock when it happens.
So one of the things you talk about is that where you are in life is not who you are. Can you explain that for our audience?
Yeah, a lot of people will make a bad decision, or life will hit them hard. They may lose a child, become depressed, start drinking. We've all gone through really rough times. But that's what they are. They're just rough times. And they shouldn't and don't define you as who you are as a person, because who you are hasn't changed, just your life circumstances have. But a lot of people, including myself, tend to think that, well, if you're broke or poor or unemployed, that you're a bad person or that you are your circumstances, and you're not. It's just where you are. It's not who you are.
And in fact, you say tough times teach people how to become tougher.
Oh, yeah, and Damon Johns, from Shark Tank, he says the same thing, that, when you're in tough times and you don't have money, you're forced to be more creative and innovative, and a lot of good things have come out of that. People get fired and they can't find a job, so they start a business, and then they end up being wildly successful, and that wouldn't have happened if they hadn't been fired. So,
right.
Yeah, tough times, you just have to change the way you look at it, but tough times can really be good times.
So you say that so many people believe money is this huge barrier that prevents them from doing or getting the things they want in life. And you reference a story called One Red Paperclip. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, there was a guy who decided that he wanted a house, but he couldn't afford a house. So he decided to trade his way up. So he got a red paperclip, just a paperclip like you'd find anywhere. But this one was red. And so he traded that, and he traded it for like a pen shaped like a fish. And he traded the pen for something else, and he just kept trading up, and ultimately he did get his house. So it's just how creative you can be. There's all kinds of resources. It doesn't just take money. There are other ways to do things.
So do you think today that there's still people that are homeless, currently homeless, that are entrepreneurs?
Oh, yeah. I know some definitely. There's a gentleman near me who's a painter, and he lived in his car by choice, so he could put all his money into his painting business. And he did it for about a year and got some good contracts and was recently able to move into an apartment. There's two gentlemen in North Carolina. They're both homeless, living in a homeless shelter, and they started a business selling T-shirts, and they're doing fairly well. And I think ultimately they'll be able to move out of the shelter. I know hairstylists, all kinds of people that have started a business and done very well with it with no money.
So in your book, do you give people like a first step they need to take? Say they're in a shelter. Because really, first of all, it sounds like this book would apply to anybody that wants to become an entrepreneur, right? Whether or not you're homeless.
Yeah, you don't have to be homeless to read
Right.
this book. Even if you don't have money, you can read this book.
Yes.
So for instance, there was a gentleman when I was homeless, and he needed a bus ticket back to Kansas. He went into the woods. He cut some kindling. He found wood and sticks in the woods, and he panhandled for $5 and got some twine. He bound the twine around the sticks, and he sold the bundles as kindling for $10 a bundle. And he sold out in a few hours, and he made almost $400, which was enough to get his bus ticket, the hotel, and food.
Wow.
And he didn't have any money, but he knew what people wanted. It was Denver. It was October. It was cold, and people were buying the big lumber that you can get in the store. Well, you have to have something to start that. And he had a sign out, and he said, I'm homeless. I'm not asking for a handout, but a hand up. So he appealed to people's desire to help without just giving him money. And I think that was the key. But I see people, selling bottled water, at intersections. So instead of asking for money when somebody pulls up to a red light, they're like, bottled water, $2 a bottle. And they have a sign, I'm homeless, don't want a handout, just, a hand up. And people give them $5 and say, keep the change.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's all in your attitude. How much do you respect yourself, and how willing are you to work for it?
And how do you, just having been in a situation like that, how do you, get past hopelessness?
That's the hard part. I mean, I got past it because I have a personal faith. So a lot of people do or don't have a faith in God, or just even a faith in a higher power, just faith in society. But something, you've got to believe that there's something out there that cares about you and that's going to step in and make a change. And that's individual for everybody. I don't want to push one thing on anyone, but you just got to believe. You got to find something to believe in.
Wow. So
it's just hope itself. Yeah.
So who is the audience for your books now? Is it homeless people that are reading the book?
Homeless people are reading it, but it's actually like organizations, churches, groups, volunteers. They see the book or they hear about it, and they'll buy 5 or 10 books and then hand them out to the homeless. That's how I ended up working with this homeless class. One of the shelters here in Charlottesville, Virginia, saw the book. Somebody had given them a copy, and it was in the, in the break room or whatever. And they said, "Well, can you donate some?" And I said, "Sure, if you can show me what you're going to do with it." And then that turned into, well, let's hold a 10-week class, free, for 4 to 8 homeless people. Let's have business people in the community work with them, go through the book, and see if we can find an idea that they can start their own business with. So, we're going to do that this fall, and I think it's a tremendous opportunity.
Right. Because do you think, we talked about the Dr. Phil's, and I think Tony Robbins was...
Tony Robbins was too?
Yeah, Tony Robbins. I remember when I had seen him in one of his programs, he had been homeless. The singer Jewel, Jim Carrey, this says David Letterman. Do you think that maybe at sometimes people like yourself and some of these people we've talked about, that you get to a point where you look at it that the fact that you were homeless at one point actually later in life becomes your competitive advantage?
Oh, definitely. Susie Orman, she lived in a van and worked as a waitress. And now look at her. She's, multimillionaire, if not a billionaire.
Right.
She works with Oprah. If you read any biography or autobiography of any great person, Lee Iacocca, all of them, they all came from really poor, beginnings. And And while some of the books will say it and some won't, that whole rags to riches thing is very pervasive in America. That's why we love America, because you can come here with, like Arnold Schwarzenegger came here with $4 in his pocket and became a film star and a multimillionaire. And so the only thing that really stops you is yourself. And that's the exciting thing about this book and about the country is that, you can be what you want to be, but it's going to take some hard work.
Yep. And in fact, I would even argue that it's easier in this day and age because we have like those crowdfunding sites like Kickstarter and Indiegogo. Like there are ways to potentially raise money without even having any type of like regular banking or bank behind you.
Right. The internet definitely makes it easier than it used to be.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can buy my book or you can just get online. You don't even have to buy my book. You can get online and just Google how to start a business with no money. And there's just thousands of examples. You can go to SCORE, and I think most communities have a SCORE office, or you can go to score.org, and they have free classes. They have free books, materials. They'll hook you up with somebody who's usually a retired business person to help mentor you and teach you. So the opportunity's out there. The only thing that stops people is they don't believe they can do it, or they listen to friends and family who tell them they can't do it, and they just don't try. But that's the only job security you're ever really going to have is owning your own business.
Right.
It's very true.
So what do you plan to do now that the book is out?
Well, I'm working on a workbook to go with the workshop they're going to have, and my mother died in February, and her one regret was that she never sailed the Tom Bigby Waterway. So I'm taking sailing lessons and buying a boat, and I'm going to sail her ashes down the Tom Bigby Waterway.
And where is that? I'm not familiar with that area.
It's a river that goes from Tennessee to the Gulf.
Oh, wow.
Through Alabama, yeah. So then I'll have to go around the tip of Florida. But I'm solo sailing, so I'm doing it all by myself, and I'm doing a documentary and writing a book about that. And then the proceeds from the movie and the book, I'm using to start a tiny home development here in Virginia for homeless people.
Wow.
So, yeah, working with the University of Virginia and with 84 Lumber, and give them a shout out. They've agreed to donate all the materials.
Wow. How many houses are you going to build?
Well, we're going to start off with like 4 to 8. Because
Wow.
we've got to overcome a lot of zoning and political issues. Because tiny homes, people don't like tiny homes. The government doesn't like tiny homes because they take away from the tax base.
Gotcha.
Right.
Because you get taxed on the square footage, and there's not a lot of square footage in a tiny home. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, so you're using your free time to change the world. Not a bad use of time.
No, it's not.
Well, one person at a time. I think if I can build a model and I can convince people that they can start a business, and I can convince communities that tiny homes and developments give people affordable housing, then I think that'll change the homeless issue. And if it just creates a model that other communities can use, then it's been a success.
So do you have any homeless people that you've personally coached? Any success stories?
Yeah. I don't know if I could give their names, but I get like 2 or 3 emails a week because of the TED Talk I gave.
Yes.
And homeless people will call, or families of homeless people will call. The one I feel the best about, there was a college girl, and she was in a big city, Boston, and she didn't have money for rent. Her family was out of state, and she was homeless. She was literally living on the streets and hiding in the library, and she emailed me and said, what do I do? How do I survive? She never had any kind of experience like that. And I was able to get hold of one of the deans at the college where she was going, and they were able to provide her with housing until the break was over, about 30 days. But it kept her off the streets, and out of the weather, and, may have saved her life. I don't know. But,
Wow.
she found the TED Talk online when she was searching for homelessness and reached out. So, I answer everybody that writes me.
Wow.
And either, try to connect them with an organization or tell them, tips for like emergency homelessness. Maybe they've just been evicted or they've had a fire and there's no support. But there are a lot of things that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And they do. They find me and email me. So
Can Can we ask you to share a little bit, because we have a couple minutes left, share a little bit about your travels, what you did when you took the year off?
Yeah, it was great. So as a photographer, I spent a lot of time in the Rocky Mountains, and I photographed fox and wild sheep and I think a bear at one point. But I would literally pull off the side of the road into a maintenance road, and I would sleep there over the weekend, and I would just take pictures. And it was beautiful. And there were times, even in the city itself, I was at a Walmart in the richest area in Highlands Ranch, the richest area of Denver. And so there I am sleeping in a 75 Chevy van next to the Rolls-Royce dealer. But it kind of, it really changes the way you see the world.
Right. And
it makes you realize, that there's incredible opportunity and there's incredible devastation and sadness, too. So
wow.
It really was life-changing.
But also, I think what you've learned from both your parents is that if you want something in life, go after it. Don't wait until it's too late.
Yeah, and too many people wait. They say, I'll wait until I've got more money or I'm more stable. But you don't have that time. There's no guarantee. And there's never going to be a perfect time. You just have to do it and then, make adjustments as you go. It's like with sailing. I'm learning with sailing that you tack and you have to deal moment by moment with the wind and the waves and the water and the weather. And there's no guarantee. And that's the exciting part because you find out what you're capable of. And that, to me, is the most exciting thing, is self-discovery.
Wow.
Great.
Awesome stories. And I'm definitely going to read the book because I think it's something that any entrepreneur can probably pick up some tips on building a business.
Yeah. And like I say, I hope people will, there's sample chapters you can download at the link I sent you.
Okay.
And even if you don't buy the book, at least get online and just look at what starting a business can do. It can free you up. It can bring you more money. It can give you more time with your children. It can really bring about the things in life that matter. And it's not money. Money helps, but it's relationships that really matter.
Right.
And that's
true.
what I'm trying to push.
Awesome.
Excellent.
This is Becky Blanton, the homeless entrepreneur, and you can check out her book on Amazon.com.
Great. Thanks for being on the show with us, Becky. That's going to do it
Thank
for this
you, guys.
edition of Leaders and Legends and for our show Get Real. Tune in again. Join us next weekend. Thank you.